Hey, what's up, guys? Riff here. So today we continue our coverage of the slow-moving car crash that is Disney's live-action remake of Snow White. As the weekend has passed on and we've had about a week at the box office for this film, we can now truly appreciate the absolute bombing that this film is doing and the terrible numbers, not just representing this film, but representing the entire movie industry right now. And because of the chaos going on with this film, people are starting to get very frustrated in the industry and within the production of this film, and they're sharing insider info and other testimonials sharing the chaos going on behind the scenes and the preferential treatment that Rachel Zegler has received during her controversies that do not reflect the very harsh punishments other Disney actors have faced for much lesser controversies on social media. And when I was getting ready to record this video, I couldn't help but think about this Screen Rant article from about a year and a half ago, where Disney's CEO, Bob Iger, was reportedly becoming increasingly frustrated, exhausted, and overwhelmed after multiple box office flops. And that'll happen when you keep making soulless cash grabs and shameless live action remakes for the simple purpose of a quick cash grab. And that's exactly what Disney's live action Snow White has turned out to be. As you can see, the headline states here, Snow White bombs, breaks record for lowest live action remake opening. Is anybody surprised? Absolutely not. So here are the initial numbers. We're about a week into the film's release now, and here it is. 48 million domestic, 43 million international, for a total of $92 million. This is an absolute disaster. If this was 92 million on the opening weekend alone, that would be a disaster. But this is even worse than people had projected. In fact, with the domestic box office numbers, the opening weekend was supposed to get somewhere between 50 to 60 million. That was in the latest predictions. And now look at it. It hasn't even reached 50 million yet until this point. Now, what's really interesting and concerning for Disney here is that the international numbers for this film are really underwhelming. I think they were cashing in on international numbers carrying this film because a lot of the controversy involves domestic issues, a lot of things involving politics in the United States. But internationally, people are not impressed, and Disney focused hard on the international audience. And look at the results for the opening weekend. These are the international numbers. The UK, Mexico, Italy, France pulling in some decent numbers, but look at the bottom here. China at $900,000. They didn't even break a million in Disney's golden goose, that is China. That is the place in the world, which obviously based on its population, can save a Disney film when it's flopping domestically. And they've done that many times over. Here's a good example of the Mufasa the Lion King, the latest Lion King movie that came out a few months ago. This did really poorly domestically, which is surprising given the predecessor film and how well it did overall. But it got saved by the international box office. It represented 65% of the gross for that film. It was completely saved. It was dead in the water within about a week or two of release domestically, but internationally it's continued to rake in money over and over again. It's still in theaters, by the way. This was released in December. It's crazy the run this film has done. Now, of course, this all comes as a surprise to Rachel Zegler, who never in a million years thought people wouldn't show up to her film. This old clip here has resurfaced, and I think it really sums up the narcissism of this woman in full detail.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
They did not. So basically, she's going on this performance here, probably her best performance of her career, where she's saying that she's basically this stunning marvel of the world that no matter what, people will show up for. Well, obviously we know that's just an example of her narcissism coming through once again. But she's been taking victory laps. On Instagram, she posted this the other day saying, number one movie in the world. Social media has fried my brain. So she's saying it's the #1 movie in the world, referring to Snow White, of course. And that's very odd because she's right. That's the thing that's really sad. She's right. Despite the comments coming in on Instagram and instantly just bombarding her with criticism and negative comments, and she would deactivate the comment section pretty quickly, she's not wrong, which is the sad thing. This was the #1 film over the weekend, which doesn't show how good Snow White is. It shows the absolute devastation of the movie industry right now. And let's be honest, guys. It's been a really rough year for movies, okay? At the top, you see Neza 2, a Chinese film that's grossed nearly $2 billion worldwide. Some of these Hollywood actors are going to have to start learning Mandarin pretty soon because this is an absolute bloodbath. So we go from almost $2 billion to $400 million with Captain America Brave New World, who limped their way over that $400 million mark, which we all know was something that reflects a budget that Disney is very, very cryptic about. They say it's $180 million, but most people believe the actual budget is way bigger because that was the original budget before a long run of reshoots. So this is likely a big financial disaster. Then you have Dogman here, raking in $130 million. Bridget Jones, mad about the boy. I have no idea what that is. 123. It's the 4th best grossing film so far this year. And then Mickey 17, that was pretty disappointing. And then Snow White down here. Absolutely crazy that Snow White, despite being such a disaster, is already the 6th highest grossing film of 2025. We're basically in April at this point. That should be pretty concerning. Now, of course, you can look beyond the box office numbers, right? We also have the IMDb ratings. And the IMDb rating for this is a 1.6 out of 10 on 157,000 ratings. Let me repeat that. 1.6 out of 10 on 156,000 ratings. If that sounds like the worst all time, that's because it is. People have absolutely repudiated this film. And as I said in my previous videos about Snow White, the biggest indictment on this film is not just the controversy. It's the film itself. It's underwhelming. And the #1 comment I see over and over again is that this film is boring. And that's the worst thing that can happen. Your film is just boring. There's no saving grace. People will overlook a lot of controversy, actors they don't like, as long as the film is actually good. And unfortunately for Rachel Zegler and this film, it's just not very good. It's boring. People tuned out. And speaking of that low number, that 1.6, it finally happened, ladies and gentlemen. Dragon Ball Evolution has been avenged, okay? They have finally found a foe that's worse than them. And Snow White, and this meme, by the way, had a 2.2. It's now a 1.6. So it's even a further gap at this point. But the memes and all of the claims that Dragon Ball Evolution was the worst film ever and they used this IMDb rating, well, the memes have changed. Snow White has cemented itself into the history books, and just congratulations to them. They really deserve it. So, let's move on to another round of controversy. A lot of people in the industry and a lot of people from inside the set are starting to reveal things to the press. We're going to begin with this. So, the son of a Snow White producer named Mark Platts went off on Rachel Zegler for ruining his father's movie. And this would cause a lot of stir on social media. So some of the posts they're referring to here is posts like this, the latest post on social media, or at least on Twitter, from Rachel Zegler, where she talks about the film, basically is making a promotion, then also at the same time promotes her next project, which is, I would assume, very unprofessional. And then she ends it with, and always remember, free Palestine. So the activism comes through, and this was obviously very polarizing, whether you agree with the message or not. It's obviously going to be divisive to people, especially when it's made under a post talking about the Snow White trailer that also just happened to be one of the most disliked YouTube videos of all time. But of course, let's see those comments from that producer's son, where someone, it appears on Instagram, said, "Your dad flew to New York City to reprimand a young actress." Any word on this? Because that's creepy as hell and uncalled for. People have the right to free speech, no? Shame on your father. And he said this, "You really want to do this? Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and to do publicly for. This is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all of the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged. Mic drop. Okay, he definitely has a very fair point here. And I don't want to make it like so dumbed down. This is all just Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler is the reason this failed. Well, no, she's a very large contributor, but it was a part, right? She was the major factor in destroying the PR and goodwill of this film. And she did it repeatedly for the course of years. And that is something that is mind-boggling. And of course, people are going to be frustrated who are working on the film because they were left out to dry. They really were. And of course, people are running defense for Rachel Zegler in the replies of various posts sharing this message. And you can see this person, Gal Gadot is the reason the film is doing so bad. Gal Gadot, literally ask 10 people, 5 say Gadot, 5 people say Gadot. It is what it is at this point. But people like this, who are clearly big fans of Rachel Zegler, they're trying to blame this all on Gal Gadot. Gal Gadot. Whatever, man. Yeah, okay, you might have a point that she contributed to some of the negative PR because she's a very loud supporter of Israel in the conflict with Palestine. And yes, of course, again, that's going to isolate people and make them not want to support this film. But let's not pretend that the level of attention and negativity that Rachel Zegler produced is anywhere near what Gal Gadot did. It's not even close. And of course, you look at the end product at the end of the day. So here, on the left, my left, you have Rachel Zegler saying free Palestine. On the right, you have Gal Gadot, who served in the IDF and is openly supporting Israel. Congratulations, you pissed off everyone. I mean, really, you pissed off a very large majority of people one way or another. And that's before we're getting into issues with the film itself, with the CGI dwarfs and all of the changes to this classic film. It's a mess, okay? It's not all on Gal Gadot. That's crazy. But of course, we're getting more inside stories revolving around social media controversies involving Rachel Zegler. So Variety, who was literally doing tricks on Disney and this film for months, if not years on end, all of a sudden are changing their tune and sharing a lot of negative stories about this film, including this headline saying, "Inside Disney's Snow White fiasco, death threats, beefed up security, and a social media guru for Rachel Zegler." Down here you can say on August 12th, 2024, 3 days after Rachel Zegler hit the stage at Disney's D23 fan event to introduce the first official trailer of Snow White, she thanked supporters effusively in an X post for driving the teaser to 120 million views in 24 hours. 1 minute later, she added an afterthought in the same thread, and always remember free Palestine. That addendum, which amassed 8.8 million views, nearly 4 times the number for the initial post, quickly made the rounds, with many inside the studio expressing shock that the Snow White star would commingle the promotion of its 270 million tentpole with any kind of political statement. A Disney executive raised the studio's concerns with the Zegler team, while the film's producer, Mark Platt, flew to New York to speak directly with her. But the actress, whose relationship with the studio began to unravel in 2022 during a contentious West Side Story Awards season campaign, and continued as she trashed the beloved original Snow White, stood her ground, and the post remained. Yes, and then, of course, from that, there was death threats directed towards Gal Gadot because of their opposing political views, and that caused a need for extra security, which, of course, ballooned the budget of this even further. Again, is that a huge deal with the budget? No, but it was something that was caused by this contentious series of political activism all across the board, I guess, with this film at this point. But if you look further into some of these actions, Disney was trying, I guess. So from the New York Post, Snow White star Rachel Zegler's social media was vetted by Disney after anti-Trump post. So actually what happened here is there was seemingly multiple rounds of Disney trying to come in and wrangle in Rachel Zegler, and these had to do with the anti-Trump posts she has made consistently for almost a decade at this point. And this is the stuff that I guess really scared Disney. But interestingly enough, they didn't make her take down any posts. They instead sent a social media guru over to see Rachel Zegler and tell her, hey, maybe this is a bad idea to be alienating the majority of the domestic population that your film is greatly riding on. And, it was posts like this way back in 2020. This is some people's first introduction where she quoted this NPR tweet saying, F Donald Trump. Funny how Twitter didn't ask me to revise that one, which is interesting. Look at the time of this. June 12th, 2020. That's like 3 months into COVID, and like the way the social order was going at that time, yeah, I'm not surprised you got away with that tweet. Like, that was very acceptable at the time. But then she also has other tweets like this from 2018 saying the Trump administration is falling apart and I'm just watching while stuffing popcorn in my mouth dramatically. Yes, I love seeing your own country fall apart because it's serving your political needs. Like, what a patriot here. And then this is what really drew in the attention, likely got the social media guru to go talk to her long Instagram post where she ends it saying she hopes that Trump voters and Trump himself never know a moment of peace in their life ever again. Which, again, great way to alienate a good portion of your domestic box office. And then, as people have pointed out, Gina Carano was fired. This was a Star Wars actress who made some controversial posts, but mainly the one that got her likely fired, was the main contributor, was a post where she was mocking people with pronouns in their bio. Instead of getting a social media guru, instead of getting coddled, instead of being allowed to leave up most of these posts that were related, she was shit-canned. Rachel Zegler got preferential treatment for what I would say are much, much, much more inflammatory statements. Again, you can agree or disagree with her messages about Trump. That's totally up to you. But obviously, they're inflammatory. Like, anyone looking at this objectively knows that's the truth. And the fact that Carano got such a harsher treatment for making fun of people with pronouns in their bio on Twitter versus this, it's crazy. It's unbelievable bias, and look how it paid off for Disney. Congratulations. But don't worry, the Rachel Zegler stans are in full force. This person saying Disney next, Variety next, Mark Platt next, Gal Gadot next. Every tongue that rises against Rachel Zegler will fall. Here's another one from a Rachel Zegler stan account dedicated solely to hyping her up, saying, she'll always be my Snow White. Hashtag I stand with Rachel. I told you, there are people out there who are rabid in defense of Rachel Zegler, no matter what she does. And this film and how it bombs won't change it. But anyways, that's going to do for this video. This is the latest update on Snow White. What happens next with this film, I'm not really sure. It feels like things are bubbling behind the scenes. People are frustrated, and we might see some more stories from behind the scenes. We'll have to wait and see if that happens, though. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comments section down below. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you next time.